first question that I have for you. In its 50th anniversary year, Trent is welcoming a new president. How will you ensure the association fosters a healthy and collaborative relationship with Dr. Leo Rohrig? And you'll have 2 minutes to respond to that question. Can you put 2 minutes on the time, please? Sorry, I just gave us something technical. Great.
So the current existing structure is that the president meets with, the 2 presidents meet together about once a month. Something I would like to see expanded. Once a month, a lot of things can happen. So I'd ideally say, every other week we meet with Leo. Sorry, I can't pronounce the last name, so I'm not going to try. So building off on that, I think the fact that a new president is coming in is the perfect chance for the TCSA to start off saying, this is what we will be for the next 4 years. 4-year term, we are setting ourselves up to be this voice on campus. We will not be not heard, we will not be ignored. So making sure that that opinion is heard and that we are not sort of the, they're just students, they're gone every year. The challenge that student leaders typically have because we are only in our position for 1 year and then new people come in. So establishing early on that we are to be heard and we are a voice for students and making sure that we follow through on that promise to not just the university and our lobbying and advocacy methods, but also falling back on our students. So promoting the president's office hours, so promoting the fact that, hey, the executives just went and met with Dr. Leo. Stuff along those lines.
Thank you. My second question for you. The Student Center continues to be in a planning stage where the scope of the project is not where it was initially expected to be. How do you plan to communicate this to students and ensure that the project continues to move forward at a reasonable pace? We have 2 minutes to respond.
So originally the Student Center wasn't very much thought out. 2 years ago it was put on the ballot and the question was, do we even want a student center? That did not pass. Last year it was put back on the ballot and said, okay, so here's a rough idea of what we can get for $105, $95, and $85. And again, I will not go too far in saying that it was not well thought out in the planning of this. So we went into something saying, here's prices, not knowing exactly what we could get. We are student leaders, we are not building student center builders. At the time, the executive did not have experience in a project of this scope and size. So moving forward, I would ensure the association creates something like a business plan so that we know a way to cover the cost of the building, something we've encountered this year, something that we did not consider last year. And in that building plan, we have to re-engage the architects. Once that is done, I would hopefully bring it back to the students and say, this is a fully fleshed out idea of what the student center will be. Here it is. Do you still want it? Is it still the idea that you had in mind when you voted on it initially?
Okay, thank you. And the third question that I have for you. There has been talk of absorbing the Part-Time Student Association under the purview of the TCSA. What are your plans for this endeavor? 2 minutes to respond.
I think we need to re-engage in the conversation with the Part-Time Student Association. Through the year, we've had several part-time students come to us with concerns. These concerns range from everything to where is their money going, to accountability, to the governance structure of the Part-Time Student Association. So this year we've looked at finding ways to see if it is possible to absorb, if it is desirable to absorb, if part-time students actually want it, if it's just a small minority. If that means we have a more opt-in system rather than just being able to pay our membership fee, does that mean we give students the chance to say, you're opting into all of our fees, health and dental, bus services, clubs and groups, our entire levy. Is that an option? Or is it something that we can get back to the table with the Part-Time Student Association and say that this isn't just absorbing this is creating a long-term partnership that will change both of us for the better, so that we are no longer just a full-time and part-time student associations, we are an undergraduate student association. We already cover a wide range of marginalized students. Part-time students, maybe not directly marginalized, are a different minority on campus. They do have different needs compared to most full-time students. So, in a mechanism where we already have a way of representing minority students and marginalized students, I don't foresee any difficulties in representing the additional interests of part-time students.
Thank you. So we're going to open up the floor now to questions for the candidate for the presidential position. Are there any questions? Okay, so we're going to go with Han. Your name was? Okay. And then you, and then Betty, and then Kenny, did you have your hand up? And then Kudzai and Clarissa. Remember your order.
Just a very quick question. Did you just say is that you will create a business plan and bring back the referendum question to open up the referendum again for the student center? If that is your plan, do you see that it's just undoing what TCSA have been trying to do in the last 2 years? If it's not your plan, can you explain your plan again?
Okay, 30-second blitz, here I go. So I wouldn't say directly, I would say here's another referendum. I would say here's our business plan, here's our full plan, and this is going to perhaps another AGM, or perhaps a special AGM that is just dedicated to Student Center in a highly intensive consultation period. And then if at that point it is the case that the membership wants to not go forward, if the board says, no, it's not feasible, that's at the point where I think a referendum should be initiated. And I don't think it undoes everything. I think it's just covering our bases of what we should have done before we ask the initial question.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, you're next.
Great. I'm wondering, okay, so as a student, I think when I pay my student fees, it's only like 25% of what I'm paying is I'm going to TCSA, student fees in general. I feel like I'm not getting that much out of the TCSA. I don't see that many people here. I think there's maybe a lack of involvement with the students. Is the TCSA broken? Can it be fixed? I mean, that's the 30 seconds is not really enough, but
Before I let you respond again, for some people that came in later, because these are 30-second blitz responses, if you would like to further discuss it with the candidate, again, campaigning takes place over the next 2 weeks, feel free to seek that person out. 30 seconds for response.
Okay, so I'm not going to say we're broken. I definitely think we've had a few wrenches in the machine. We've gone through extensive executive restructure, and we haven't followed that up with looking at our other internal governance structures. Does that mean we have to increase the board? Does that mean we have to do more outreach? It obviously means we have to do more outreach. As you said, there's not that many people here. It is something that the current executive has identified as something to increase next year. It is something that will hopefully continue with a new executive to increase that outreach, to find different mechanisms of ways to reach students. Secondary to that...
Thank you.
My question is answered, actually.
Oh, okay, great. Thanks. All right then. Kim, you're next.
What's your main goal if elected as president to accomplish within the university?
So my main goal actually is relating to something that's been talked about by every other vice president. It's tuition. It's something that I personally, as the current vice president campaigns, and I really do not think can be encompassed just in a campaign. It is not something that I think can simply be addressed in a petition. It is something that must be an organizational goal and dedication to making it a better case for students to have a lower tuition, whether you're domestic, international, part-time, full-time. Regardless if you're undergraduate or graduate, it should not matter. So, main goal would be to make it a commitment on behalf of the TCSA to...
For a sec, you were up for your question.
Okay, you mentioned that talking about combining the part-time position with the full-time. Is this meaning that they are going to more or less start partly those bi-weekly meetings? And if so, does that mean you create another commission of positions to represent them at the board meeting?
So I think in an ideal world it would mean another commissioner. And it would also probably mean another staffer. So it would probably mean another staff who is a part-time coordinator. It's something that they already currently have in their structure that I think would be a nice complement to our current structure. So I think having them specifically dedicated to everything that part-time students need and the other administrative issues that would arise out of that would be an office side to it. And then the other side would be, yes, another commissioner who is elected specifically for the purpose of the voice of part-time students.
Okay, Kenny, you had another question that you wanted to ask?
Yeah. Aside from tuition, the change on tuition, what other major change which have happened in the university with the power you have position?
Okay, you have 30 seconds to respond.
It shouldn't be so hard for students to raise their concerns. This is my current 4th year at Trent. It's something I have run into every year in every position I've had. That it's very difficult for students to raise their issues and then have their voices heard. So finding a way to, whether it's assisting the Vice President Campaigns and Equity, who's the Chief Lobbyist and Advocacy Vice President of the Association, or finding ways to perhaps introduce a staff position, or whether it's going to the university and saying, you know what, the way you're doing things isn't working. We need to work on a way to make it better.
Good, you were next.
What's your lobbying plan?
30 seconds to respond.
So in terms of like beyond, well, administration, MPPs, what's your plan about engaging them on Trent issues?
All right, so this is about, I'm going to say threefold initially, and I'm going to go at, think as I go, so hopefully it is threefold. 1, university, 2, CFS, 3, provincial government. University, we need to have more regular sit-downs with them, we need to make them aware of the issues. That means going beyond just the PVP structure, so president, vice president group, which is about 6 people. We need to engage more than just them, we need to engage more staff in the issues rather than just going to the top of the department or an assistant or the people we know. Next, on to CFS. CFS is the only student organization that has a lobbying seat to the provincial and federal governments. I would highly suggest that...
Thank you. Matt, you had a question?
Yeah, I just a question about the tuition. You're focused on tuition, increasing tuition. Given the financial, I guess, precarity of this university, it seems like a little bit of a strange choice that would be your number one issue. Can you talk about like why that would be your number one issue, and maybe a little bit about how that relates to the university's somewhat difficult financial position?
All right, so this is going to be a little bit, because I'm going to be talking about the current game already. What it is to get into a partnership with the university where they say, yes, tuition is increasing too fast, whatever that means, whether it's freezing it, tying to something like CPI, limited increases, and then going twofold, joining with them to lobby to the provincial government to find alternative funding forms. Typically, students have been told, no, there's no other way to do this because whatever, provincial governments have this certain agenda of, you know, we need to do corporate tax cuts, we need to not cut other services, we need to not find alternative arrangements. Well, that means that we do find an alternative funding formula and work with.
Thank you. Yan, you are next.
The turnout at TCSA election usually low. So there's concerns that the executive and the president get paid a lot of money and not enough accountability. But that's not actually my question is, where do you get your claim to represent the student? What makes you think that you can say you represent Trent University student when you do the thing you plan to do? Where do you derive that legitimacy?
All right, so I'm not going to say that 20% in our general election is a good turnout, but it is a nice base. Ideally, it'd be higher than that. But the election is the only way. So ideally, it would be a case of we get more turnout. We focus on that. TCSA made a nice direction in this year, in that we hired our chief electoral officer very early in January. Well, that means we dedicate more resources and more budget to it to make sure that we are continuously finding ways to increase member engagement, and then that way have more interactions with our members. That's where I see that legitimacy coming from. So it's something that perhaps we can do more of. So.
Thank you. Okay, and next up we have James.
I've worked with you for a long period of time, and you have various experience within the university. How do you plan on using your experience through your 4 years at Trent University towards furthering the association in forward motion, I guess, essentially?
So James is correct. I have a lot of experience with the university. I have worked for them in 3 different offices. I have volunteered on 4 different organizations. Wow. And what that's given me is a lot of personal relationships with a lot of, not just administrators, but support staff in the university and different areas of the university. So using those personal relationships and that knowledge I do have of just generally how Trent works, just different areas of the university. So using that personal thing that I've built over 4 years to the benefit of the rest of the membership, something that they may not have had the chance to build in their time at Trent.
Okay, we have another question from Kudzai, but before I let you go, is there anybody that wants to do more questions so I can get you on the list? Matt? Okay. All right, Kudzai, go ahead.
How will you fill 35 hours a week?
All right. So, a little bit of a difficult one again. Largely there are committee seats, and I think those should be spread out a bit more than they currently are. There will be a lot of student center things going on, but ideally it should be getting out of that office that is in Champlain and going out being around students. So does that mean I might choose to do some work and answer some emails out in the middle of OC and be like, giant sign, I'm your president, come talk to me. That way. So that way I hopefully get out and talk to students more. If I want to say that I am the president of the TCSA and I'm not the top of the, not the chief, but the sort of central representative for student.
Obviously, we've talked about SMA a little bit. get some of your thoughts on it, and kind of what are things that you were either happy with or relatively unhappy with in the document, and what are the most important things that you think students should know, and how do you plan on? It's a very broad question for 30 seconds, but yeah.
All right, so happy with. I was very happy that Trent University decided to recognize its various different ways that students identify themselves and want to promote those. I would actually encourage them to go further than that. Right now, one of the main groups is LGBTQ plus members. So that shouldn't just be that. It really needs to commit to the fact that we do have a large international student presence. We do have a large Indigenous student presence. We do have a large different several regional groups, and it needs to be increased. We should not just say just international students. It should be we have a large portion of students from X, Y, Z, and focus on that. Things I was not happy with, the fact that rather than try to figure